Inside the Houston Texans will begin shortly. Get your questions and comments ready. Super Chats cut the line. Let's go! Time to talk about your Houston Texans.
It has gone final in Buffalo. The Bills defeated the Steelers, which means the Houston Texans have a rematch against their Week 1 opponent in the divisional round next Saturday afternoon. Texans at the Ravens. He's Aaron Wilson. My name is Jake Asman. Let's talk all about it. It's time for another episode of Inside the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I'm fired up. The excitement is real.
It's time for Inside the Houston Texans with Jake Asman of ESPN Radio, featuring KPRC TV's Houston Texans insider Aaron Wilson.
We just want to make the city of Houston proud.
Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for the most comprehensive insight on your Houston Texans.
So guess what?
Aaron, we got a lot to talk about, but of course, let's start with the news that just became official. Next Saturday, you will be back where you grew up. You will be back in Baltimore as the Houston Texans will play in the divisional round against the Ravens. Your initial reaction now that the Steelers-Bills game has gone final?
Yes, Jay, back at the M&T Bank Stadium, that is, and that was the site of the Texans' season-opening loss to the Ravens. It was a close game until halftime, and then the Ravens took control. Since then, we've seen a dramatic quantum leap of improvement from the Texans, and they have, since that 0-2 start, won 11 of their past 14 games, become AFC South champs. C.J. Stroud playing as well as any quarterback in the league. And now the rematch against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Rookie head coach DeMeco Ryans, one of the candidates for NFL Coach of the Year, against Super Bowl winning coach John Harbaugh, always has the Ravens in the playoffs, always competitive. And this is perhaps, his best team in years. And it's certainly the Texans' best team in several years. You got to go back, I think, beyond the 2019 season when they waited to the AFC Divisional Round. I know they had Deshaun Watson. I know they had DeAndre Hopkins and J.J. Watt. I think this team is better, just more cohesive, playing tighter football. Perhaps they like their head coach a little more than they did Bill O'Brien. I think that's not a stretch of the imagination. And you think about the vibes surrounding this team. No controversies, no trade requests, no legal problems. I mean, the biggest thing, the blip on the radar screen was the Kerry McNair, filing to have his mom, Cal McNair's mom, their brothers incapacitated and trying to, I think, wrest control of the team for a sale. It was the thought from several sources about the motivation behind that, but I don't think it's going to be successful. I think they're going to keep the team, and they couldn't be happier with their decision to hire DeMeco Ryans, to draft C.J. Stroud, to retain general manager Nick Caserio, who's made some shrewd moves along the way. Latest of those being, I would say, some of these waiver claims of defensive linemen. Those have been really, really good. And you look at the Texans, they're dangerous. They're healthy. Jonathan Grenard is back. Will Anderson Jr. continues to play hurt. They got Robert Woods back. They did lose Noah Brown to a season-ending shoulder injury in that game. He's been in and out of the lineup all year, had a lot of tough luck with injuries. They've had hard luck with injuries all season. They've overcome all obstacles. And here they are in the divisional round, first time since 2019 season when they got blown out by the Kansas City Chiefs. And by virtue of the Bills' victory over the Steelers, Texans go to a place not quite as cold as Kansas City and Arrowhead Stadium, which is frigid, but they will be playing a cold weather playoff football game against the Baltimore Ravens. What a great quarterback matchup. Can't wait to break it all down and watch that game in person. C.J. Stroud, Lamar Jackson, different styles, both some of the dynamic quarterbacks in this league, young quarterbacks. They're both young. Lamar is seasoned but not old and still very spry, great ability to run, elusive, and they're an interesting team. They're play calling. They're in sync now. Todd Monken, that was just his first game. They didn't look so sharp to me in the first game of the season. The Ravens are a better team, and the Texans are a lot better team that first meeting.
No doubt. And I know there were a lot of Texans fans who maybe would prefer the Kansas City Chiefs. I look at it differently, Aaron, because as good as the Ravens have played, they're still an unproven team as far as this core that they have put together. Lamar Jackson's playoff numbers are not very good. He's one loss away, and Houston fans will appreciate this, from being called James Harden. He's about to win his second MVP award. He's probably going to be a unanimous MVP award winner for the second time in 4 years. But the bottom line is this: the last time the Ravens were the number one seed, they got beat by the Tennessee Titans, an upstart Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry-led team in Baltimore. And the Ravens, they rested their starters the last game of the regular season. They didn't play in the wild card round. I think there could be some rust. There's certainly all the pressure in the world on the Ravens in this game. The Texans go into this one with house money. I think it's a better draw for the Texans to play a Ravens team they already faced, rather than a Chiefs team that, yes, they haven't been the vintage Chiefs we're accustomed to seeing this year, but it's still Andy Reid, it's still Patrick Mahomes, and they're still the defending champs. So I actually think, as crazy as it sounds, maybe it's not so crazy. I think the Texans playing the Ravens is a better matchup for Houston than it would have been had they had to go to Kansas City.
It's a great take, Jake. And, I look at the Chiefs, and it's Patrick Mahomes. He's very difficult to sack. He's got great chemistry with Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice. And they've got a defensive line that's pretty enviable with Stone Cold Jones and George Karlaftis and our guy Charles Omenihu, former Texan. And I think they're difficult to block, and they could have provided some real challenges for the Texans, who are coming off a great pass blocking performance, especially Laramie Tunsil shutting out Myles Garrett. And Laramie, I think, was a big snub for All-Pro. Should have been at least second team All-Pro, but he feels the same way. So I agree with LT on that one. You look at the matchup, and yes, Baltimore, great off-the-ball linebackers, Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen. I covered Ray Lewis and Bart Scott when they were playing together. This is the closest thing to that they've had. Two hard-hitting, tough guys. It will be difficult for the Texans to establish the run, but not impossible. And the Ravens are first in the NFL in fewest points allowed. They have a very stout defense coached by Mike McDonald, who's a head coaching candidate for several teams. And we'll see if he lands one of those jobs. Bobby Slowick on the other side of the football, also a head coaching candidate. He's got 4 requests. He's got the Commanders. He's got the Titans. He's got the Tennessee Titans. And I believe, what was the other one? Chargers. I think it was Chargers, if I'm not remembering wrong right now. I got a lot on my mind. But the Texans, yeah, I think it's a neat matchup with the Ravens. And I know this. Back in the summer, I was texting with John Harbaugh, and he was saying he thought the Texans were going to be pretty good. And he wound up being right that the Texans would be good. He was impressed with them, especially with C.J. Stroud. He was telling a lot of people about C.J. Stroud after that first matchup. And the moment wasn't too big for him. I remember I just went back and read my old story on C.J., looking at the quotes about he was tough, he was, stood in there, and I think he did. And, yeah, even though he didn't get the win that day, he learned something. And I thought they played well. I mean, Steven Nelson intercepted Lamar Jackson. Tavierre Thomas, who's now on injured reserve out for the season, he forced a fumble. They made some plays on Lamar. So I don't think they go in there intimidated by the Ravens at all. Why should they be? And why should they be intimidated by anybody? The Texans are as good as these other teams in the playoffs, and they are playing with house's money. I don't think they look at it that way. They look at it like, why not us? All those things. And, yeah, why not the Texans? Every year somebody new competes and is a viable contender, and that's the Texans this year, going from worst to first. So, Jake, I look at all the growth and all the development, and it's like two different football teams from the beginning of the year to now, and a lot has changed, and you go all through the lineups and the offensive line configuration, and they couldn't really pass protect very well in the first game. A lot has changed, and I think Laramie Tunsil, even though he got dinged up this past game, has been healthier since he was at the beginning of the year, when I think he had a sore knee coming out of training camp, and he looks better out there. He's moving pretty well. I thought that his performance against Miles was very notable, and something I wrote a little bit about at KPRC at www.click2houston.com. You think about the Texans, and some guys are starting to emerge. John Mechie III had that 27-yard catch, 3 catches, 44 yards, hits his best game yet. And they've been waiting for somebody else to step up. to complement Dalton Schultz and, of course, Nico Collins, who is one of the best receivers in the league now. How about Brevin Jordan? I mean, no one saw that coming. He said he used to be a running back. He said, check out my old YouTube videos. I need to look at those. We're big on YouTube. Brevin Jordan's probably big on YouTube with his youth football stuff in Vegas, running the ball. And he took off. He said he thought somebody was on his hip. Somebody was coming. I saw him get away from Martin Emerson, and he was off to the races. He was running 20 miles per hour for a 245-pound, 6'3" guy. He was moving. So, yeah, some neat things happening for the Texans. That's what it takes. Guys that are sort of unsung, they've got to make some of the plays. And I remember this is a while back. I'm thinking about the Buffalo playoff win that the Texans had in 2019. Remember Tywan Jones?
Sure.
Little swing pass, sets them up, puts them in position. Things like that. Key guys that maybe people don't remember that many years later, except for sports writers or whatever. But these plays, they really count. Everybody's got to step up.
And, you get back to the win over the Browns. And, I thought the Texans were going to win, Aaron, but just the way they won, I mean, to win 45-14, to score the same amount of points on defense as the Browns did on offense, I mean, that's as complete of a performance as you will see from maybe any team all playoff long. And, I mean, it starts with the quarterback. Just your thoughts, a couple days now removed from being at this game in person, what C.J. Stroud did, because, I mean, he was phenomenal against a defense that was one of the best coming in. I know they're not nearly as good on the road as they are at home, but still, this was the same Browns defense that dominated the Texans a few weeks back in that building. And here comes C.J. Stroud and the Texans, and C.J. Stroud looked like a 10-year vet with multiple games of playoff experience underneath him, not a guy making his first ever playoff start.
Cool, calm, and collected, C.J. Stroud. Never let him see you sweat. And I think he really is poised, got ice water in his veins, all that talk. He is living up to all of the cliches that I can think of and really does rise to the occasion. He's an impressive young man. He's someone that really, really enjoy covering, getting to know. And he's our Good Guy Award winner, really cooperative with the media. He's awesome with his mom. He's awesome with his foundation. He does so many great things off the field. And on the field, these throws, they're impressive. These are textbook quarterback throws. And my comp, though he's more mobile, is Tom Brady. That's the quarterback that he reminds me the most of right now, early in nascent stages of his career. But I see a lot of Brady in him. And I'm talking like a guy that wins MVPs, Super Bowls, does things right off the field. That's my comp for C.J. Stroud. But he's a better athlete, and he's shown that many times. But, yeah, Tom, who to me is the epitome of what it takes to be a quarterback, and we'll see how long CJ plays, but I don't get too far ahead of myself and start getting him ready for a yellow jacket in Canton just yet, but he is on a great trajectory. He's playing as well as anyone, and you always have a chance when you have a quarterback like CJ Stroud, and he's been incredible so far, and don't see that ending all of a sudden. The last time he threw an interception, Jake, and this is how confident I am. Like people said, don't jinx the guy. He hasn't thrown a pick since the Arizona Cardinals game. He's at 5 for the year. And this stat's worth repeating. Only quarterbacks in NFL history, which is a long history, to lead the NFL in passing yards per game, but also have the best touchdown interception ratio are C.J. Stroud, Tom Brady, and Joe Montana.
Pretty good.
Greatness. Yeah.
Pretty
Absolutely.
good.
And pretty good, too.
I mean, you look at what Stroud's been able to do, Aaron, and he gives you a chance in any game. And, I'll use an example to another game we saw over the weekend of the wildcard round. It felt like the Green Bay Packers and their young signal caller, Jordan Love, they came in loose. They came in with no pressure on them. And it felt like the pressure that's on the Cowboys, a team that hadn't been to a conference title game since the mid-'90s, they kind of felt that pressure. I think all the pressure is going to be on the Ravens in this game next week, Aaron. They're going to be the team that's coming in maybe a little rusty. They haven't played a game that counted in 3 weeks by the time we get to Saturday. And the Texans come in. They're not going to say it, but no one's expecting them to win. I saw already the opening line is Texans an 8.5-point underdog. Well, you know what? The Texans might have just as good of a quarterback as Lamar in this game. And people are going to say, what? He's the MVP of the league. But you know what? Lamar Jackson's unproven in the playoffs. CJ Stroud, the last 2 weeks, has basically been in playoff games if you count the win in your in-game in Indy. I think the Texans have a great opportunity to maybe punch the Ravens in the mouth early and have a chance to steal this one outright.
Lamar can be somewhat enigmatic. He sometimes, at times in Baltimore, they behind the scenes would worry about his work habits, his preparation, his attitude. And they finally got on the same page to do the contract. And I think they're a relationship that had its ups and downs, but it's a strong relationship now. And this year, he really did it the right way, and they got on the same page. And, obviously he deserved to get paid, and he did. But, yeah, he's been streaky in the postseason, and I don't know why. I think at times he lacked the weapons. Now I don't think he does, and he might get Mark Andrews back. He's got Zay Flowers. He's got Odell Beckham Jr. He's got Isaiah Likely. He's got some guys. He's got a pretty good offensive line, and they always figure out a way to run the football. And that, to me, if they can run the ball, and maybe they're going to have some runs for Dalvin Cook, who they picked up off of off the street, signed to practice squad, expect to elevate him. So we'll see. He wasn't very good for the Jets. The Ravens seem to be able to plug in any running back, almost anyone, and get yards. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Texans attack that. They become a stout run defense. We've seen them shut down Derrick Henry and backs of that caliber in recent weeks. And I think DeMeco Ryans has these guys very fired up. I love the way they all run to the ball and they tackle. You saw that Desmond King tackle where he's on top of Joe Flacco. He's spinning around like he's breakdancing on a cardboard box. Looked like one of those old music videos from the 90s. The guys are still breakdancing and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. There you go. I'm popping and locking. But it's just like Desmond King. All that said, I think there is pressure on the Ravens, and they expect to win. They've got a head coach who is as experienced as they come, one of the most experienced head coaches in the NFL. He's been to the top. He's won a Super Bowl. This doesn't quite feel like the Joe Flacco, Anquan Bolden, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs kind of football team. I'm not seeing a lot of Hall of Fame type guys like the legends, guys who I covered majority of their careers, especially Flacco and Ed and all of those guys. But that's why they play the games. And the Ravens are a proud organization, have a lot of respect for them, have friends that still work there. I would say it's going to be very interesting. It's a cool matchup. I mean, for the divisional round, Ravens, Texans, and that's about as good as it gets.
Yeah, 100% with you. And before we wrap up, just looking at Lamar's career playoff numbers. So Lamar Jackson's been in 4 career playoff games. His passer rating is 68.3, 900 yards, 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So he's been vulnerable. And this is an opportunity for a Texans team, I think, to come out. And if they could score first, we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, later in the week. I mean, game on, because the Ravens could come in after not playing a game that counts for 3 weeks. Texans playing playoff games the last 2 weeks. And all of a sudden,
the rust factor, yeah.
Yeah, all that pressure's on the Ravens. And I think it's a really good matchup for the Texans. I know there were some Texans fans conflicted, but I think this is the preferred matchup you want rather than going to Arrowhead and taking on Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
We're going to see, Jake, rust versus rest. What's more important? The Ravens will have those principles applied. They've been practicing, I'll tell you that. They haven't been on vacation. They've been having football practice, which are traditionally difficult practices. So they have continued to be in the gym, lifting weights, all that stuff. It's not the same thing as practicing and playing in a football game. They also rested their guys, as noted in the regular season finale. So it's been a while since Lamar's played, but they've been through that before too. I think they're used to it, and I think they may handle that better than they have in the past. But ultimately, it's going to come down to who's better and who matches up the best, and the plays that they call, the schemes, all of those things. So fascinating matchup. We'll break it down some more. I'm sure we're going to talk again. I'm flying up there on Friday and look forward to seeing people. Family is still up there in the Baltimore, D.C. area. So, yeah, it should be great. And you know what else? There are a lot of chances for people to get involved in their own way in this football game through our friends at Underdog Fantasy.
Do you want to make money making picks on NFL games? Then you have to try Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. With Underdog Fantasy's pick'em game, you pick between 2 to 5 players and select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stacks. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game. What I love about Underdog is how easy it is to use their app and website. You can also pick between players on your other favorite sports like baseball, basketball, and hockey. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with my promo code ASMAN. That's ASMAN to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. That's promo code ASMAN at UnderdogFantasy.com. Must be 18 plus and present in a state where Underdog operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ncpgambling.org.
Check it out, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code Wilson in addition to promo code Asman, and you can get that deposit match. If you're watching this either right before Bucks hosting Eagles kicks off or during, you could submit Underdog pick'em entries even during the game. So you could essentially live pick over at Underdog, and Aaron and I will give you another Ravens-Texans Underdog slip later this week. But check it out, UnderdogFantasy.com. Download the app. It is legal, and it is awesome to use in the state of Texas. Promo code Wilson to get the deposit match up to $100. Aaron, you got a busy week ahead.
Yeah, I better run. Good to talk to you, Jake. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
You got it. He's Aaron Wilson. My name is Jake Asman. This has been another episode of Inside the Houston Texans.